Welcome or welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to talk about feminine sovereignty and human design. Feminine sovereignty is a body of work that I have been organically creating over the last 20 plus years. And for a long time, it was all about the inner landscape. And in its current iteration, it also has to do with how we connect with each other as sovereign beings in the world so that we can become the sovereign stewards of our planet. And I'm currently writing a book about this, and I want to share with you the intersection of feminine sovereignty and human design. Because when I discovered human design and really became adept in it, I realized what a huge tool it was to help us with our personal sovereignty and eventually with our feminine sovereignty, which is how we relate to each other in the world. Today's video, I want to talk to you about pillar number 1 of feminine sovereignty, which is co-creating with the flow of life, right? It's about how we recognize and work with our connection to spirit, recognizing that we actually are spirit, and then we co-create with that powerful force. So going into talking about pillar number 1, I want to share with you some distinctions that I have been generating both through writing this book that I'm working on right now, that I hope will be out by the end of the year, and then also in my work with clients, because I work with this material with people all the time. My guess is that if you're here on my channel, that you think that co-creating with the flow of life or working with spirit is a good idea. I don't think you think that's not a good idea, but maybe you don't know what that means exactly or how to do it. And I want to say for me, that was true for me for a long time. I always thought it was a good idea, but I was kind of like, okay, but how does that actually work, right? And I had some experience of really feeling like I was in the flow and feeling like I was being supported and buoyed and directed by a sense of inner guidance. I've had that ever since I was a little kid, but it was very inconsistent and very unreliable. And it wasn't something that I could draw on just when I needed it, right? It seemed to appear in crisis situations for me. But other than that, it was very kind of distant and unclear to me. There was a point about 25 years ago when I was introduced to metaphysics and to the law of attraction, and that started me off. And I did make my way out of Columbia into the next thing that I did then, working with a network marketing company. And I was able to be quite successful in that network marketing company using metaphysics. But again, it was very inconsistent. And I got very frustrated because I felt that I could, focus on something that I wanted and I could imagine it and I could put my energy towards it. But then I would get very inconsistent results. It would work really well for some things and not at all for others. And I didn't know why. And that's why I decided to really dive into the inner landscape to understand what was going on the inside, because it felt like there was like Teflon against my affirmations and my visualizations about certain things in my life. It was just like it would slide right off. So I don't know if you've had those kind of experiences. So I wanted to understand that better, and that's why I became a clarity breathwork practitioner, about 18 years ago now. And I did that work, working really deeply with people on their conditioning and their unhealed trauma, being able to heal that wounding, being able to release the programming that's not useful for us, because what was in the way a lot was wounding, suspicion, fear, imprints from early in life, from other lifetimes, from our ancestry. So there's all kinds of things that are going on in the inner landscape that can get in the way of us feeling that connection with spirit. So I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, but I want to share with you 3 different steps today that you can do to start working on cultivating your connection with spirit and then co-creating with that flow of life. I've discovered that as I've really learned how to do this using my human design, that it's become much clearer and much easier to do. So I'm going to share some of that with you today. Okay, so step number 1 is connecting with spirit. Now, what does connecting with spirit look like and feel like? Okay, this is inner guidance. I was mentioning this kind of inner direction before, but it only came in really very challenging situations where I knew I really needed a change and I didn't know what to do. So inner direction, inner guidance, intuition, right? What we call intuition. And in the human design chart, there's all kinds of intuition, not just one kind. There's many, many different kinds. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But then there's also our imagination. Our imagination is actually where we connect with the flow of life. If you think about this for a minute, what is the imagination but the place where we step outside of what's already known and we start to create and imagine things? And where do those ideas come from? Where do those images come from, or those stories, or those possibilities? They come from our connection with the flow of life. Because a lot of times people will say things to me like, well, I don't know if that's my intuition or if I just imagined it. And I'm like, well, your imagination actually is a kind of intuition. It's not something that's completely separate from it. Maybe you did imagine it, but maybe that imagination is part of your intuition. Have you ever thought about it that way? Then there's also your felt sense. Now, I'm a very kinesthetic person, and you may or may not be as kinesthetic, but we all have the ability to feel how spirit is communicating to us through our bodies, because our bodies are like a tuning fork. And so we can pick up vibrational frequencies and we resonate with them, right? And if you just think about, this is kind of a funny thing that I've been saying a lot lately, but is that we are bags of water, right? We're bags of water and minerals. That's basically what this physical form is, with a whole bunch of bacteria and some human DNA and some bacterial DNA. That's basically what this physical form is, animated by your soul. Right? Animated by spirit. Your soul is your own personal expression, your center of consciousness within the one life. It is your own expression of the all that is, your soul. And that's what's animating your body. If you've ever been with somebody when they've passed away, or you've seen them not long after, you realize how much the spirit is what animates this form. And when the spirit is gone, the body starts to just decay immediately. And you can see how completely different it is when it no longer has the spirit animating it, right? So if you think of us, again, this physical form as being a bag of water, well, water resonates, right? It resonates. If you've ever seen those messages from water, where the water that we have takes on different imprints, right? And so we can feel the message that are coming to us from spirit through our physical form. In order to be able to do that, you do have to have a relationship with your body. If you're kind of living outside your body, or if you have a complicated relationship with your body, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, it can be a little bit more difficult to feel that. But that felt sense is a key part of it's actually a form of intuition. Okay, so let's talk really specifically about human design here. So every type in the human design system has its own strategy. And what is our strategy? Our strategy is how we're designed to engage with the flow of life. Not everybody talks about it that way, but that is what it is. So for us generators, whether we're pure generators or manifesting generators, this is 70% of the population, we are designed to dance with the flow of life through response. I do have some videos specifically about how you can do that. You can go and check one of these out right here if you want to. So I'm not going to go into that in detail right here. But this is how we're designed to dance with the flow of life, is through response, through having intentions and desires, and then looking and seeing what the flow of life brings us in our outer reality that we then get to respond to. And projectors, another 20% of the population, are designed to be recognized and invited because they have not as much physical energy as generators do. And so they need to be more careful of their energy. And so they need to be recognized and invited. They can't be going out as much as generators can, just kind of acting in the world. They need to be more selective, and their gifts are best provided to those who already see their value. And so they're going to know that when they are recognized and they are invited. Manifestors, their strategy is to listen for the creative impulse that they have that goes on inside of them that is their inner direction. So for them, it's very embodied in a lot of ways. It's not really a mental thing. It's a creative impulse that's coming out of the motor that they have that's connected to the throat. And then reflectors are here to really be engaging with their environment and feeling what's going on in their environment and then reflecting that back to their community. And so for them, they're very sensitive to what's going on in their physical and energetic environment and tuning into that and learning how to dance with that in a way that makes them feel really on purpose and on track. So each type has its own way of dancing with the flow of life, and then each particular design has its own authority. And again, authority is another kind of intuition. It is the way that we don't make decisions with our mind. In human design, we never make decisions with our mind. We make decisions we make decisions in some way through the body. So for generators, we make decisions through connecting with our sacral authority. It's that red square down at the bottom of the chart that all generators have. That's what makes us as a generator. And our sacral authority is basically our gut response. It's the part of us that goes, or For me, it's very much a full body response. It's oftentimes not even a sound. It's like, or, right? It's very embodied. It's not mental at all. I work with people a lot on getting connected to this when I, work with clients or have people in my programs. And for others, some people, projectors really need to talk things through because that's how they get to clarity, is through talking things out. Sometimes I've met projectors who've been able to do that through writing in their journals because, again, they're kind of accessing a more intuitive part of themselves when they're able to express, and then through hearing themselves and also just through working things out through the process of talking. I know I do this in writing all the time. I'm constantly writing in order to discover what I really think about something, even though I'm not a projector. And so projectors do it that way. Manifestors, again, they're just tapping into that creative impulse that they have. And then for reflectors, they say that they're tuning in over the course of a moon cycle. I think it's a little bit up to the individual reflector to be experimenting and exploring to see what it is that works for them in terms of making the best decisions for them. And yes, waiting a moon cycle, 2 moon cycles, tapping in definitely can help them come to clarity. But again, what are they doing when they're doing that? They're tapping into the intuition that is coming to them or the guidance that's coming to them from source, from their relationship to the moon. Then there's also emotional authority. That's a whole nother subject. You can go and watch my video here about emotional authority because it's not really so much the way you make decisions as what you need to look out for so that you make the best decisions for you. So there's our strategy, there's our authority, and then there's these 2 really big circuits in the human design system. There's the knowing circuit, which is individual circuitry, and it's mutative, it's highly intuitive. It just is bringing in understanding from non-physical right through that 61 there that is helping us to just know things. I have a lot of the knowing circuit, so I get complete downloads about things on a regular basis. And also just sometimes when I'm talking to people, I just tune in and I can just know things about them. Sometimes they're not always so happy that I know that, but I do. And that was certainly something I experienced as a kid when some of the adults around me weren't so sure about the things that I knew about them. But I did know them. And so the knowing circuit is a really big sub-circuit. It's the largest sub-circuit in the chart. And then there's the sensing circuit, which is the right brain energy that runs from the right brain all through the left-hand side of the body. And it's very abstract, it's spatial, it's cosmic, it's connected to the all that is, it's creative, it's embodied, right? It's experiential. And so this is another form of intuition that we have that is connecting us with spirit. Just looking at the human design chart, you can look to your strategy, to your authority, to the knowing circuit, and to the sensing circuit for how you can connect with spirit. Now, what you can do is you can look for the places that are defined in your chart that are connected to the knowing circuit and the sensing circuit, but it doesn't just have to be that way. I know for me, I've developed a very strong relationship with the sensing circuit, even though I only have one gate defined in that whole circuit. So you can look at the qualities that are represented in those circuits and see what you relate to, and you can cultivate your awareness of them as a way for you to get in touch with your intuition and in touch with spirit. And definitely your strategy and your authority are going to send you in that direction. Some of the things that get in the way of your ability to do this are, for example, left brain dominance. You've probably heard me talk about this if you have been watching my videos very much, which is that we all get trained into the logical, rational, analytical, linear, focal way of perceiving the world, really. That is left brain dominance, that is dominant in our culture, and that is fueled by Western science, right? And it's not that that's bad or wrong, it's just that it's out of proportion with all of our other different kinds of intelligences, in particular, the sensing circuit and the knowing circuit. There are three main gates here that come in where we're receiving information from non-physical, right? One of them has to do with our left brain, one is our right brain, and one is our knowing circuit. So there are three different ways of knowing that the human design chart shows us, and only one of them is left brain dominance. But we tend to privilege left brain dominance. We tend to think that it's right and that we have to be able to prove it. We have to be able to do research on it. We have to be able to replicate it. All of those things that Western science tells us is what's true. Well, you can't do that with intuition. You can't do that with inner guidance. You can't do that with your gut response. All of those things do not live in the left brain and the right-hand side of the body. That's not where they live. Another thing that gets in our way is technology, because technology really fosters us to be, doing that focal gaze, doing that left brain thing. But the other thing I want to mention here is that because we live in this consumer society, we're really taught to really consume, right? That we're watching Netflix, we're watching YouTube, we're watching social media, we're watching TikTok, whatever it is, and we're there and we're passive and we're consuming technology that's created by others that we get addicted to because we get dopamine hits while we're watching it, right? Playing video games and all of that. And it really impedes our intuition and our imagination because we're in a very passive, and I don't think of it as receptive like we're really bringing it in, but it's more that we're in a passive consuming kind of a way. And that really gets in the way of our intuition. Sometimes a religious upbringing can get in our way because we don't trust that we're getting this information and this inner guidance from non-physical, from the greater spirit, if it doesn't align with the religious tradition that we grew up inside of. And so I have talked to some people who are really kind of wrestling with that because they don't feel like it aligns with what they were taught. And even if they're not still in that religion, there can be some dissonance that they're experiencing inside of them because of that. Then, of course, there's distrust and fear and uncertainty and overwhelm and all of these different things that we generate generally because of fear, because we're not in a trusting state with the universe. And so we're not going to be able to connect with spirit if we don't think that spirit has our back, right? Or if we think that we live in a harsh and punishing universe as opposed to a benevolent and compassionate universe. And so having distrust and fear can really get in the way of you being able to connect with spirit. we need to be developing our ability to tap in. And I'm going to tell you in step 3 some ways to do that. But let's talk about step 2 here for a moment, which is the co-creating aspect with spirit. So the first part of pillar number 1, again, is pillar number 1 of feminine sovereignty, is co-creating with the flow of life, right? Is recognizing that we are each an individual expression of the flow of life, and that we are constantly having that energy flow to and through us, that spirit is acting through us, and that we can also then purposely co-create with that spirit. So you may have heard, in law of attraction or in metaphysics that, for example, you will bring into your life that which you're a vibrational match to. Right? And that is true to a degree. I think there's something about that. I think it's complicated to know sometimes what our vibrational frequency is. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in step 3, is how do we raise and clear our vibrational frequency. But the co-creating does happen depending on how we are vibrating, right? And some things come into our field because they're in alignment with us, and things will move out, including people and places that we live, and situations, right, will come and go depending on if we are a vibrational match with them. Then you've probably heard this idea that whatever you focus on expands, right? Is that where that comes from is that energy will follow or will create form for where we put our energy, right? Whatever we're focusing on, our energy is going, and that's the thing that we're going to create in our life. And it's based on the understanding, which really quantum physicists are understanding now, as well as this has always been a part of the metaphysical traditions, which are thousands of years old, which is that everything is created as energy first. Now, what's interesting here is that means it was created in someone's imagination. And if you just look around the environment that you're in right now and you see all of these different things, right, that people have created, they happened in somebody's imagination before they came into physical form. So one of the key parts of learning to co-create with this flow of life, which like I said, is the foundation of feminine sovereignty, then you want to learn how to create with things as energy first. And affirmations are one way of doing that. Doing vision boards is another way of doing that. But even more, it's about being able to tap into what the quantum physicists called the unified field, right? Or the cosmic energy, or what in the yoga tradition we would call the great cosmic womb of life, right? Which is this expansive, spatial, energetic space that we get to when we can expand beyond what our mind is telling us is real. So step number 3 is going to be, well, how do we actually learn how to do these things? How do we help to clear the things out that are out of the way? And then how do we build our capacity in this realm? Because in feminine sovereignty, the trajectory of the 8 pillars is always about being able to understand, what's the most empowered and the most evolved expression of this particular theme, which in this case is co-creating with the flow of life. And then what's in the way of that? Like, what has gotten developed inside of us that is putting up roadblocks to that? And then how do we build our capacity in that area? Because we may have certain things that we already have kind of innate to us, but we also always are growing and developing. And so we want to be able to build our capacity in that area. So this step 3, which has to do with practice, is all about building our capacity. And this is the outline of a sadhana practice or a spiritual practice that I recommend to all of my clients, because it is the foundation of our ability to connect and to co-create with spirit. So one piece of it means practice. Like when you're learning a musical instrument, you have to practice. And when you're learning a musical instrument, you have to practice at least 15 minutes a day. Ask any music teacher, right? It's the same thing. When you're building your spiritual muscle, as it were, you need to practice at least 15 minutes a day. I practice at least an hour a day, and 2 hours when I can do it. It's great. I love it. And need to have an attitude of surrender, a surrender to a force that is larger than us, not a surrender like, oh, woe is me, I'm disempowered, I need to subordinate myself, but it's more the recognition that, I am one part of a much larger whole, and I'm going to surrender my mind that thinks she knows. But she really doesn't. She's kind of small compared to this huge universe, right? So I need to surrender to this larger flow of life and what it can bring me so that I can be receptive. And again, this is about being receptive to what non-physical and what the creative intelligence of the universe can bring you, rather than consuming, seeking to consume something, which is a really dysfunctional way of receiving, in my view. So there are 5 steps inside of step number 3, 5 different actions that I would recommend. So the first one is movement, some form of movement, so that you can get into your body. And if you're doing this early in the morning, which is always what's recommended, is you're also starting to lubricate the joints. You're starting to get energy flowing and circulating. So I do about a half an hour of movement before I do the other pieces, because that's really what I need. I need to be doing large movements. Sometimes I dance. I have a whole thing that I do. If you're really a yogi, you could be doing your sun salutations. If you like to run, you could go out for a run. You could get on a trampoline. You could just take a walk around your block. There's all kinds of different things you can do, but some kind of movement. So that's one. Number 2 is breath work, some kind of conscious breathing. I have a number of different videos that can teach you some of the Kundalini yoga practices. And here is the playlist right here in my Gifts for My Audience, where you can learn what those are. You can also go to clarity-breathwork.com, where you can get some instruction from me about how to do clarity breathwork. And there's a couple of audios there that will lead you through it. So you could do that as well. You could also just do long, deep breathing for 5 minutes. Just calling all of you here and using your breath to help you do that. There are many, many different forms of breath work, and I'm not going to go into all those right now, but the thing about breath work is it helps to move energy. It helps to clear out some of that distrust, that doubt, that suspicion, the fear, the things that are in the way, right? And then it also helps to lift your vibration. And then you also want to really ground yourself. So you want to be able to connect to the earth. You can do this by lying down on the earth. You can do it just by imagining that your spine is connected to the earth. You can do it by just imagining the planet being underneath you. Again, there are many different ways for you to do grounding, but basically you really want to be in your body. Okay. And you want to connect to the earth, because the earth is, one of your greatest support systems. And you don't want to be flying off into the nether reaches, because actually when you do that, you can get really scattered. Okay. So it's movement, breath work, grounding, then meditation. So if grounding is how you connect to the earth, meditation is how you're connecting to the cosmos or to the flow of life or to the all that is. And now that you've prepared yourself, ideally you'll be able to quiet your mind and you'll be able to connect yourself as an energy being as well as a physical being. This is why I love the Kriyas of Kundalini Yoga so much, because they enable us to do this in a really powerful way. And so they prepare us so that then when we're quiet and we tune in, we can really feel the unified field around us, or the cosmic field around us. And then when we start to create in that place, right, we're creating as energy first. We are imagining what it is that we desire, and we are imagining it as if it has already happened, as if we have already experienced it, or as if it's happening right now. And as we do that, we create an energetic template that we are then really involved in, that is sending out that message. We're creating it as energy first, and then it must come into form in our physical reality at some point in time. Then the last piece that I always recommend is some kind of writing, because Rhine can help us both to be creating as energy first. It's another way that we get to do that, especially if you can be out of your mind when you're doing that. Yes, be out of your mind and in your body and connected to spirit. And you can be receiving guidance that way through automatic writing. You're just asking your inner being to be giving you direction, asking your soul to give you direction. And when you develop the capacity for this, you can get a lot of information and a lot of guidance this way. It's not just regular journaling where you're writing down like, what happened yesterday or even how you feel about something. It's more about being able to, now that you've done breath work and you've done movement and you've grounded and you've done some meditation, you've really prepared yourself so that you can be receiving what it is that your soul wants to share with you. Please remember that in the yoga traditions, there are 8 different limbs. And the reason that there are so many different limbs is that there's an understanding that we can't just get to meditation. You have to prepare the body. And there's all these different ways that you need to prepare the body. You need to prepare the energy system. You need to do breath work. Often there's mantra and there's mudra. There's all kinds of different things that are involved in those traditions. And also you have to have the philosophical framework to do it. Now, I'm not saying you have to learn all the 8 limbs of yoga, but my point simply is that if you, for example, have just tried to sit down and meditate and you've found it hard to do, I've done that in the past. There's a reason for that. You need to prepare yourself. And so these 5 different elements that I just gave you are a relatively simple but very effective way that you can get into the state where you can truly start co-creating with the flow of life. And if you are interested in finding out more about the 8 pillars of feminine sovereignty, I'll post there's an overview video that I have, and I'll post it up here on the what's coming up next. So you can go and check that out if you want. All right. That's my video for today. Many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.